Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 30th of December. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The search for the missing AirAsia plane is expanded as officials admit the jet carrying more than 160 people probably crashed into the sea. In an unexpected move, South Korea proposes holding high-level talks with North Korea in January. Plus, in a landmark deal, South Korea and Japan agree to share intelligence on North Korea's nuclear and missile programs via the United States. Our top story this morning, the search for the missing AirAsia flight, which disappeared en route from Indonesia to Singapore on Sunday, has been widened on this Tuesday amid fears the plane crashed somewhere into the Java Sea. So far, no trace of the plane has been found. This latest incident tops off what has been a really torrid year for the Malaysian aviation industry. Shin Se-min reports.
Investigators believe the missing AirAsia passenger jet that vanished with 162 people on board crashed somewhere in the Java Sea. Indonesian officials say flight QZ8501 is likely at the bottom of the sea, a hypothesis based on the coordinates of the jet when the last contact was made.
The terrain is such that it becomes difficult to locate the missing plane, but there are chances that it could be at the bottom of the sea.
On Monday, Australian aircraft reported seeing suspicious objects roughly 1,000 kilometers away from where the jet lost contact, but it turned out to be unrelated. The plane that was carrying nearly 240 people was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when it disappeared without a trace. Not a single piece of debris has been found till this day. In July, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 that was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down over Ukraine by what many believe to be a missile fired by pro-Russian rebels. Russia denied any involvement and blamed Ukraine. The 298 people on board all perished. Up until this past weekend, AirAsia had a very impressive safety record and had never lost a plane. Hope has receded that any survivors will be found, but the search goes on. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Staying with the story of that missing AirAsia flight, more than 100 relatives and friends of the passengers and crew of flight 8501 have been waiting for news at a crisis centre set up at the airport in Indonesia where the plane took off. Now, as you'd expect, emotions are running extremely high as most of the family members start to come to terms with what most likely happened to the plane. Others, however, are holding on to the faint hope now that there could be a happy ending to this tragic story. The chief of AirAsia, Tony Fernandez, flew to Surabaya Airport to try and comfort the victims' families and also offered assurances that all is being done to try and find their loved ones. Now, in other news, the South Korean government has offered to hold high-level talks with North Korea in the new year. This olive branch from Seoul comes as Pyongyang continues to come under fire for its shocking human rights record and alleged cyber activities. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
In a surprise move towards the year's end, South Korea proposed Monday to meet with North Korea for talks sometime in January.
The Presidential Committee for Unification Preparation officially proposed talks on issues of mutual interest between South and North Korea. We hope to heal the wounds of war-separated families before the Lunar New Year holiday.
South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae said the talks would center on the issues discussed by the Unification Preparatory Committee this year and its plans for next year, which marks the 70th year of the division of the Korean Peninsula. Some plans include expanding people-to-people exchanges through sporting events, such as a soccer match between the two Koreas. The committee also plans to work towards holding family reunions on a regular basis and allowing for the exchange of letters. While some doubt a positive response from North Korea, saying the regime was never a fan of President Park's Unification Preparation Committee, others remain hopeful.
There are members of the committee that have visited the North. They say North Korea's assessment of the Unification Preparatory Committee has not been positive or negative. We hope North Korea accepts our proposal.
Analysts say Pyongyang will want to make some progress with Seoul in time for the 70th year of their division next year, and that Kim Jong-un will likely express his willingness to do so in his New Year's speech on January 1st. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, starting this week, South Korea, the United States and Japan will be able to share military intelligence on North Korea's military and nuclear activities much more easily. The agreement gives Seoul and Tokyo unprecedented access to each other's defense intelligence and should hopefully coordinate the three countries' military response to a provocation by the North. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Nuclear bombs and intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach the continental United States. North Korea has made substantial progress in its weapons of mass destruction in recent years, posing a threat to the region and the world. To adapt, a memorandum of understanding between South Korea, the United States, and Japan took effect Monday with North Korea's nuclear and missile threats in mind. It changes the way the three nations exchange their defense information. Japanese Defense Minister Gen Nakatani welcomed the move on Monday, calling North Korea's nuclear and missile threat an urgent security matter for both countries. Before the agreement, Seoul and Tokyo shared their intelligence only with Washington. The MOU means that Washington will now be able to relay that information to Korea or Japan with the consent of the country providing that information. For South Korea, that means better access to Tokyo's advanced surveillance capabilities.
By gaining access to Japan's state-of-the-art surveillance techniques, we are enhancing our capabilities.
The three nations had plans to sign a similar agreement in 2012, but that was scrapped due to opposition from the Korean public and lawmakers. To avoid pushback this time around, the agreement was scaled down to the vice minister level. It also states that the U.S. will act as a mediator when sharing the intelligence, as opposed to the previous plans, which included direct information sharing between Seoul and Tokyo. There's speculation this could lead to the phasing in of a U.S. missile defense system on the Korean peninsula. The Defense Ministry says the two are not linked, adding that South Korea is planning to deploy its own Korea air and missile defense system by the early 2020s. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Korea and Japan have vowed to make 2015 the year they improve their often strained bilateral relationship, referring to talks between Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yong and his Japanese counterpart Akitake Seiyaki. On Monday, Seoul's foreign ministry said the two diplomats agreed that more needs to be done to solve pending issues, such as Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. But the same bones of contention remain. Korea wants a sincere apology from Japan and compensation for the victims. Japan, however, claims the issue was resolved through a bilateral treaty signed all the way back in the mid-1960s. The diplomats also noted the need to cooperate closely to deal with North Korea's nuclear program and pledged to work to hold a three-way foreign ministers meeting between Korea, China and Japan.
That a team of South Korea...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now, as we enter the final stages of 2014, President Park Geun-hye has been checking up on the government's progress on policy initiatives and its goals for next year. The Korean leader said Monday that she remains committed to pushing through her ambitious economic and social reform plans. Our Choi Sun reports.
President Park Geun-hye has reiterated her determination to root out social ills and to carry out reforms to revitalize the economy.
저는 어떤 어려움이 있어도 해야 할 개혁은 반드시 해 나갈 것입니다. 우리 정부는 항상 국민을 믿고 국민의 편에서 개혁을 추진해 왔고 앞으로도 그런 자세의 변함이 없을 것입니다.
Referring to the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s, which Korea suffered from after failing to carry out structural reforms, President Park said the key would be to secure public understanding so that everyone shoulders the burden. In the coming years, she said reforms should be carried out in the areas of labor, finance, pension, education, housing, and public institutions. Meanwhile, the heads of ministries and agencies reported to the president on the progress made on the government's 38 key tasks for the year. Some of them include slashing the debt ratio of public institutions by 15 percentage points, stimulating President Park's creative economy, and expanding government support for medical services. While acknowledging the forward-moving steps in the past year, the president also pointed out that they fell short of benefiting people's livelihoods. In order to fulfill the goals in her 3-year economic plan, she said officials would have to continue their reform and innovation initiatives while keeping tabs on external factors such as the weakening yen and falling oil prices. The president also sought parliamentary cooperation to promptly pass a stack of bills made to enhance the livelihoods of the Korean people. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Staying at Korea's National Assembly, where lawmakers voted on nearly 150 bills on Monday, and grabbing the most attention were 3 real estate bills that will ease market regulations to hopefully give the market a boost. For more on how much of an impact these new laws will have on homeowners, renters and investors, Ji Myung-gil reports.
In the last plenary session of the year, Korea's 2 political parties agreed to relax 3 real estate regulations. They hope the bills will help perk up Korea's property market. One will do away with a tax that acts as a burden for owners of redeveloped properties. Currently, the government can demand up to 50% of the profits made from the rise in value of a redeveloped property. For example, if an apartment owner sees their property value increase by $90,000 after the house was rebuilt, they might have to pay up to $45,000 in taxes. But the new bill eradicates that provision starting next year for a period of 3 years. Another change deals with the houses being rebuilt in the outskirts of Seoul, where development is limited due to concerns of population density. Right now, homeowners are only allowed to claim 1 house in these regions, but the new bill allows them to claim up to 3 houses. They hope this will encourage homeowners to rent out more of their properties, which will help supply more rental homes. Apart from plans to boost the property market, the government also plans to work on stabilizing the housing market for middle and lower income households. This includes launching a special committee that will focus on settling disputes between tenants and landowners. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's current account surplus hit a record high last month, continuing its surplus streak into a 33rd straight month. The Bank of Korea says the surplus reached $11.4 billion in November, surpassing the previous record set in October last year. Both exports and imports dropped from a year earlier, but inbound shipments shrank at a faster rate due to tumbling oil prices, with exports logging $50.2 billion and imports $40 billion. The nation's accumulated current account surplus has totaled nearly $82 billion so far this year, very close to its annual forecast of $84 billion. Now, the Korean economy is showing signs of recovery, but picking up a decent head of steam is proving to be quite challenging. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries edged up 0.1% in November from the previous month, marking the 2nd straight month of increase. It did slow from a 0.3% monthly increase in October, though. The rise in November was driven by production in the manufacturing and mining sector that saw output rise 1.3% during this period, helped by demand for cars and semiconductors. However, when compared to November last year, last month's industrial output was down 0.5%. Now, Korea is becoming an increasingly hit tourist destination. A record number of foreign tourists, more than 14 million, visited Korea this year, and this swell in the number of visitors from overseas also boosted the nation's economy, bringing in some $18 billion to tourism-related industries. The Korea Tourism Organization says the 14th million foreign tourists arrived in the country back on Monday. The agency said that even the weak Japanese yen has not discouraged foreign tourists from coming to Korea in their droves. Around half of foreign tourists to Korea this year were from China. Next on the list were visitors from Japan and the United States. Now, it has been and continues to be a terrible year for transport-related accidents. At least 10 people are dead and many, many more may be missing in Italy. The dramatic rescue of passengers from a burning Italian-flagged ferry in the Adriatic Sea is now over, with the remaining people winched off the vessel to safety. For more details, let's turn to Son Jung-in at the News Centre. Good morning, Jung-in.
Good morning, Mark.
So this was an extremely difficult operation, hindered by strong winds and very choppy waves.
That's right, Mark. It seems as though it could have been a lot worse. But this is what we know so far. The Italian Coast Guard says 427 people were brought to safety during a 36-hour rescue operation. However, it also confirmed that 10 people died on the board of Norman Atlantic. And as you mentioned, the evacuation is now finished, but authorities say boats and helicopters will remain in the area to continue searching for people who could be missing. The move comes as it has been revealed that the ferry's manifest originally listed 478 names, which leaves around 40 people unaccounted for. They're still in the process of verifying the exact number of people who were on board.
So now then, the question that remains really is how this fire actually started and why it was not contained earlier and faster. Do we know some extra details on that?
Well, Mark, it's not yet known how the fire started, with only speculation that it originated in the lower deck garage of the vessel. Greek authorities said the vessel's fire doors appeared to have failed, which allowed the flames to spread quickly. The public prosecutor in Italy has requested the seizure of the ship as part of a criminal investigation into the ferry accident.
Well, Jung-in, I suppose that now everyone that could be saved has been saved. A demand for answers was bound to start in this investigation. OK, now staying in Europe, lawmakers in Greece have failed to elect a new president in a third and final round of voting, and this means they have no choice now but to call early national elections.
That's right. In Monday's presidential vote in Parliament, Greece's ruling coalition candidate Stavros Dimas received 168 votes out of 300, falling short of the 180 votes needed to clinch a victory. The government coalition has 155 seats and needs support from opposition or independent lawmakers to ensure a win for Dimas. Shortly after his defeat, Prime Minister Antonis Samaras said general elections will be held at the soonest possible date on January 25th. Greek constitution dictates that in an unsuccessful vote for president, in which only members participate, parliament has to be dissolved within 10 days and the country has to call general elections. Meanwhile, opinion polls show the left-wing main opposition Syriza party may win the election, intensifying fears of the country's financial future. The leftist party opposes the deep budget cuts Greece has implemented in recent years.
Well, thank you very much, Jung-in, for those news updates, and we'll see you back again at noon.
Any good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with football, as Korean football fans voted for the best footballer, best match, and the best goal of the year. The fans placing their votes at the KFA website from December 4th to the 26th. The results are out, and Bayer Leverkusen's Son Heung-min was named the Player of the Year, receiving 51% of the vote as he continues to have an incredible season with the German club. Also voted by the fans was the match of the year as the dramatic 1-0 victory at the Asian Games final against North Korea, with South Korea winning their first Asian Games gold in 28 years, received 54% of the votes. Meanwhile, Lee Gun-ho's goal against Russia in the 2014 Brazil World Cup received 29% of the vote and was named the goal of the year by the fans. And now moving on, everyone in Korea would agree that Kim Yeon-a's story in 2014 was the biggest story of the year, but apparently Japan also agrees that it was one of the biggest stories of the year in 2014. Now, with Germany winning the 2014 Brazil World Cup being listed as the top story of the year, Kim Yeon-a's silver medal finish at the Sochi Winter Games was listed at number 2, as Japan Times compiled a list of top 10 sports stories of the year. Despite the list being created in Japan, Kim Yeon-a's story was the only Asia-related news that made the list. And now moving over to the UFC, where for the first time ever, a Korean fighter was listed at number 1 in the UFC's Knockout of the Year. And that fighter, Stun Gun Kim Dong-hyun. Now, living up to his nickname, the welterweight fighter pulled off UFC's first KO via spinning elbow this past March during UFN 37, when his spinning elbow connected with John Hathaway in the third round of the fight. Meanwhile, despite the KO of the Year honors, Kim Dong-hyun had a rather disappointing year in finishing 2014 with a record of just 1 win and 1 loss, including a TKO loss against Tyron Woodley. And now finishing things off in baseball, it's no surprise that KBO teams have been spending more and more money on the players this offseason, but Tucson Bears' Dustin Nippert set a new KBO record as he became the highest paid foreigner on Monday. With the right-handed ace set to play his 5th season with the Tucson Bears, he received a record $1.5 million deal, making him the highest paid foreign player in the KBO history. Now, the 4 years in the KBO, Dustin Nippert has the most wins for a foreign pitcher with 52 and a respectable 3.25 ERA and 538 strikeouts in 678 1/3 innings, which is also the most number of innings pitched in a 4-year span by any pitcher in the league. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
It's another mild day here in Seoul. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Comfortable temperatures continue from yesterday with mercury levels hovering near 0 degrees Celsius across the peninsula. However, a fine dust advisory still lingers for the nation, and currently the levels of fine dust ranges between 100 up to 160 micrograms per cubic meter, which is about 2 to 3 times higher than the normal levels. And today we can expect some clear skies. However, due to the mix of fog and the fine dust, we'll be seeing some smog effect across the country. And looking further into the forecast, nationwide rain or snow is expected tomorrow, which will relieve us from this pollutant. But a cold wave is in store for us on New Year's Day, with the lows dipping down to -10 degrees Celsius. And now to our readings for today. So we'll peak up to 6 degrees this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will reach up high at 11 and 12 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 14, while Dokdo hits down to 8, while Mount Keungang is lower at -4. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, those are the news stories we have for now. Plenty more stories online. We'll be back again at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.